I just try to be as upfront as possible. But, I watched what Sean Kirkpatrick said during his last briefing when he stated that there was no correlation or no connection with nuclear weapons. And I just literally had to laugh at this guy. And you know what, Mr. Kirkpatrick, if you're watching this, I would sit down and chat with you any dadgum time you'd like to talk about it. I don't know what else I can say other than what my word is. But with all your resources and scientific background and what you know, if you think that this is not going on, you're mistaken. And you need to come to grips with it yourself. Because it has happened to people, and it's by God happened to me. And I'll stand behind that any way, fashion, or form that you can come up with. You just can't. You just can't throw this stuff in the trash can. You can't manipulate it. You can't do anything other than talk about it and tell the truth about it. And these incidents need to be brought out. And I've got other friends that want us to say something about it that have contacted me over just the last 5 or 6 years. And some of them are military also. And they say, man, I don't want anybody to know this.
Chris Lado, welcome to Lado Files. This was from a blockbuster interview I watched over the weekend. Amazing Mario Woods. He's a retired security forces. So U.S. Air Force. His job was to defend nuclear weapons. And in this interview on the Good Trouble show, Mario relays his account, and I just can't understand how Kirkpatrick and AARO can say they have no credible evidence. No credible evidence. They're just not listening to or even taking into account these testimonies like Mario Woods. And this is just an amazing, amazing testimony. So I go through it quickly. It's a long interview, 3-hour interview on the Good Trouble YouTube show. It is amazing. I watched the whole thing. Recommend you watch it, but we'll go through and catch a few key highlights from that interview. Let's get right to it. Thanks for being here. Mario Woods, retired. He was a security forces member at Ellsworth, is a nuclear base up in north part of America. So this is Ellsworth. It's up in the north part of America, the Windy Plains. It's Minot Air Force Base, Malmstrom Air Force Base, and this is Ellsworth Air Force Base. Mario worked as security forces. He says in his interview, 1 in 4 people at the base were security forces. Okay, we're talking nuclear weapons. So this is all very dangerous stuff. They take it very seriously. He mentions in the interview Q prefix. Q prefix. That's a prefix that goes onto your AFSC, basically your Air Force job description. And what it means is you deal with nuclear weapons. So Q prefix, they go through even more background checks. Okay, I actually avoided Q prefix. It was coming to the base I was at, the nuclear strike mission for the F-16s. If you didn't know, F-16s do stupidly train to drop nuclear weapons. And I avoided that, just was lucky on timing. I moved prior, so I didn't have to deal with that. But Mario did. And in this interview with the Good Trouble show, on the Good Trouble show, Mario relays his account, and I don't know how you can discount it. I mean, either we're trusting these people or we're not. So listen to some of these points as we go through it. I say to watch the whole interview, but I fast forwarded here. I'm going through clips. So Mario, he's already relayed his background. I believe that he was in the security forces. He seems like security forces. Us fighter pilots, we had a special relationship with the cops, with the security forces. They would try and catch us doing stupid things, and we would do stupid things and try and not get caught. So I'm sure he knows that relationship if he worked at any fighter bases. But in this case, he's dedicated to nuclear missile defense. Okay, so it's very serious. They take it very seriously. I've had these airmen roll up and point 50 cals at me, and it is not very comfortable, if you will. So they take it very, very seriously, as you can imagine. So Q prefix is the prefix for PRP, where it means they look at your background, they monitor you more. So Mario's relaying, he just showed up at Ellsworth. He's going out to check basically 3 days. They're assigned to check a certain November position. It's really a silo of missiles. He's there with Michael Johnson, a guy he doesn't really know. He's just meeting him for the first time during this duty that they have. And Mario's relaying right now that he sees some crazy light on the horizon. So it looks like just a weird light that was larger than it should have been up in the air. Michael Johnson wasn't interested in it, but he was interested in it. And so he talks about here, he tries to initiate communication. Let's check that out.
I said, I'm going to flip the satellite lights at it. You mind? He didn't even. He just kind of looked up and just kind of waved me off. So sure enough, I just reached up and just flipped the lights at this thing. And our lights go off and on, just a little rocker. So it's like a twist switch, off on, off on, off on. Did that 3 or 4 times, walk back outside, just right where I was standing, maybe 20 feet outside the door. Looking to my right and east at about 30 degrees, and there's a hump. And I'd been standing there maybe 15, 20 seconds, and all of a sudden it blinked off, blinked on, blinked off, blinked on, blinked off, and came back on. So 3 times it did that, and I just went, wow, it answered me. Not knowing what it was. I really honestly thought it was an aircraft. And I thought, well, that's strange. They must see me, but it's not getting any closer, and I should be hearing something. I should be hearing something now, And I didn't. So I went back into the front door, this little vestibule area beside that picture that I showed you, where that's the flight security controller's office. There's a little hallway, and it opens up into the day room. And Michael Johnson was sitting in there. And I don't remember if there was anybody else in the day room that was still watching TV or not. I really don't remember. But I said, Michael, come out here and check this out. Now, mind you, I just met that day on our ride out. We did our relief in these big blue Air Force buses, look like school buses, just painted blue with US Air Force on, and the windows are tinted out. And so I really didn't know him. And my partner, he had gone home to North Carolina to get married. And so he's taking 30 days of vacation. And I said, Michael, come out here and check this out, man. There's something up here in the air. He just kind of looked at me, and I don't think he gave me much credit. He was my team leader. He outranked me by 2 months. So he was a team leader for that time out in the field. And so he walked outside reluctantly, and stood up there, and he just kind of looked. He still didn't say anything. I said, see that thing right there? I said, I flipped the lights at it, and it went on. It flipped the lights back at me 3 times. And he just kind of looked at me, and he didn't believe me. I said, stay right here. I'll go do it again. So I went and did it again. And I ran back out there as soon as I did it. I did 3 or 4 times. Ran right back out there and stood next to him. And about 15 seconds later, it went off. And it stayed off. And it moved. And it went further north, but yet it got closer. In other words, instead of just straight north, it was kind of like an northeasterly kind of trajectory, but it stayed the same altitude. And it flipped back on. Didn't move a lot, but it moved where it was. And I said, that must be an aircraft when I did that. They must just see us. It's either aircraft or helicopter, and I think we had those Super Black Hawks or something like that then.
Okay.
We didn't have Jolly Greens that I knew of. I guess I was more Army at the time, but we had Super Black Hawks. We were effective releasing those a couple of times when we were snowed out there in the field. But anyway, I said, what do you think, man? He goes, whatever. And I think he said that to me. He said that to me a couple more times. He really didn't have any comments on anything of that night, which was really bad later on. But anyway.
Okay, so that's Mario. He's basically relaying here how he first sees this weird object in the distance. Strange light. He said it was pretty large, basically, but no sound. Okay, and that's another thing we noticed, no sound. This was 44 years ago. Okay, he mentions he's 67 years old now. So he's 23 years old. He's with Michael Johnson. Okay, this Michael Johnson guy, whatever, that was kind of his, it gets crazier in the end, but his basic reaction is whatever to this kind of whole thing. Like, not going to believe it, it's just not happening. So so essentially it goes on further. Okay, they end up getting an alarm. So basically an alarm is triggered at one of these November silos. It sounds like maybe you do have alarms. So they show up.
Bro, you got to have power in you. So anyway, I'm looking at this object pulsating and glowing. The closest launch facility, LS, to November 1, LCF. And it's got all your clothes in it in case you got to spend the night on the site in a pickup truck, which you have quite a bit. And the snow sets these alarms off. You can't reset them without digging out between all 3 antennas, which is 4 or 5 foot of snow is a lot to dig, I think everybody in security police out there has probably done it more than once, but Anyhow, so it was on travel time was only maybe 12 or 15 minutes to November 5. It happened to be the closest launch facility, LF, to November 1, LCF. So, we know it's really close. And I was the one that moved away to all of our sites because Michael Johnson, he's from another sector, I guess, and he didn't work out there. And so we gathered up everything, our weapons, our code tables, and what all we had. And we operated a F-154 pickup truck at that time, which were our response vehicles, weapons racks in the back of them. They just two-wheel drive trucks, believe it or not four-wheel drive. And loaded up and proceeded on, went through the gate, commenced our security checks, and went to the first. Everything out there is clay roads on these back roads off the highways, but you can literally travel half that state on dirt roads if you so desire. And they're good roads. They're really nice. They're not bad at all and maintain them really well. So as we were traveling, the first left and the second left at the next intersection, again, clay roads, we're proceeding up to Highway 79, which is about 4.5 miles, but that's about how far we are off of Highway 79 to the launch control facility. And as we were traveling, I'm in the passenger seat, and I guess we're in like on a prairie, you have lows and highs, right, on like plateaus and so forth. As we were going up the Highway 79, we were approaching top of I guess, the top of a plateau. And I just happened to look over to the right in the direction of where November 5 would be, because we would go from low up to high like that. And I see something bright and pulsing way off in the distance at about a 4 o'clock position. And I go, might have been 3:30 position as I remember. But anyway, it was pulsing. And I thought, what the hell is that? I've been out here a long time, but I've never seen anything like that. And so I told Michael Johnson as we were coming up to Highway 79, I said, man, there's something bright pulsing over there by November 5. I said, the first thing you want to think is maybe there's a nuclear accident or something like that, something bad happening there. And, but it didn't really excite him at all. He kind of said, whatever. Again, he's used that a couple of times.
Right. Okay. So that's the second time. So basically they're driving out. November 5 is the launch facility. So that's obviously nuclear missiles, kind of dangerous. So they spread them out and they use underground kind of facilities to connect them all. I was never at a actual nuclear base. I visited them, but I was a fighter pilot and had, like I mentioned, no Q prefix, fortunately, in my book. So they have their main facility, right? Sounds like they're kind of alert shack that they're hanging out. November 1, the larger one, and an alarm gets tripped. He says that happens based off of snow. You have to go out there, you have to dig it off. Okay, so these alarms can somehow get tripped from wildlife or the environment. So they're driving out there, and that's when Mario sees this pulsating object, whatever it is, pulsating object out there over November 5, where they're going. So he initially thinks it's some sort of accident.
Anyway, as we got to Highway 79 and turned right, now we're on top of that plateau, and I looked at about the 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock became my 1 o'clock. And you could really see this bright pulsating, like light emanating, I believe, from the ground. I don't know if it was an electrical transformer or something had gone bad. I don't remember transformers being on any of the poles out there. And there weren't hardly any poles. Most of the stuff's underground. They were smart enough to put their electricity underground when they built it. I mean, really amazing for that part of that country, It's really neat, but because you certainly can't be without power in a blizzard, in a winter storm, when it gets 40 below zero, you got to have power. So anyway, I'm looking at this object pulsating and glowing, or I didn't see an object. I just saw this glue coming from the ground at this time. And I said, man, that's that object at November 5. And he just looked at me like I had lost my absolute mind, which I thought maybe I had, maybe I was jumping the gun or something, but it was very strange. And again, he hit me with, I don't think so, or whatever. And in that tone again, he didn't know me and I didn't know him. Let's put it that way.
Okay. That's kind of the theme of the story is no one believes Mario. Even the guy that's with him was seeing the same thing he's seeing, doesn't believe him, doesn't want to believe him. And he mentions later about actually seeing beings. And it's taken out of everything he talks about it. When he goes on TV, they take it out. So quite interesting. No one believes the guy. That's basically the impression I get as he's going up to this. Even the guy that's with him watching him.
And so as we went down the plateau toward Newell, to the only stop sign, and then just beyond that, there's one stoplight, one stop sign in Newell, South Dakota. Population at that time was 254. I remember it because it was on the sign entering and exiting the little town Newell on Highway 79. Today it's 650 people live there, and super nice people, super folks. And anyhow, that stop at the stop sign, the same White House is sitting on that corner today. And it's called Orman, O-R-M-A, and you can look it up on Google Earth, Orman Road. Turn right, and we went out about, I guess it's about 3/4 of a mile, and then the road kind of turns to the dog legs to the left is what I call it, and it crossed off the pavement back on the clay. And when we did that, there was a spherical object sitting on top of November 5. That was the size, and I got to say it, size of a super Walmart building. And it was absolutely gargantuan. I could not believe what I was seeing. I've seen really large ships in my day and was really lucky to see that growing up. So large things really weren't that big to me, but this thing, it blew everything else I'd ever seen in my life out of the water.
Okay, this is just amazing to me. Right. And no one can believe it. Basically, story is just so incredible that no one believes him. Okay, so he sees an object. This is where they drive up. Okay, he mentioned the town of Newell, little town, population 250, now 650 something. This is their pickup truck. I know these blue pickup trucks. Okay, I use these trucks in the Air Force to go in the runway, right, as supervisor of flying. So I'm sure I know with these trucks exactly what he's talking about. This blue truck, he talks about a blue steering wheel. Michael Johnson is driving, and this is November 5, okay, launch facility. So this is where they have their doors that open and launch the nukes, right, all spread out, obviously to end mutually assured destruction of the world, right, with the worst idea ever. No wonder they're coming here. And now this is this object, okay, this giant object, he says, is the size of a super Walmart. And he says it at the end. He's too tired to run and too old to care. That's what Mario says. I love that statement he says at the end. And he's just going to tell the truth. You know, he has nothing to gain from this. So this is the object. If you can look at the size of this, I'm not sure what these little markings are. Mario has agreed to do an interview with me on the channel. So if you guys have questions, yeah, send them forward. Put them in the comments of this video, or you can send them my email, chris.lado16@gmail.com. So he shows up. They arrive at the gate, right? Two guys with machine guns against this, okay, this object, which is just amazing. The size of a super Walmart. He said the biggest thing he'd ever seen. And his father had taken him on ships. He relays in the first 30 minutes of this interview that Mario's father brought him to shipyards and to actual ships. So he's used to seeing Navy ships, the largest thing he had seen in his life up to that point. So just amazing to me.
And this was a top view of it. I think
That's yes, Joe, top view of it. It may not be as big. I kind of ran out of paper when I drew that, and it may not be as big as it was, but it was extremely large. And where our vehicle is in the lower corner of this, we pulled up at a 45-degree angle and noticed those little 4 lines on that little driveway right there. That's a cattle gate to keep ranchers' cattle from coming out into these clay roads. And we were about 20 yards, 60 feet or so, a little bit more from where the vehicle's positioned to them. And that was our tactical throwdown, ready to fight, whatever stance that you want to call it, against something like that. And, I mean, really, I have to laugh at myself every time I look at this stuff. Well, what are we doing? I mean, this was clearly a technology that was so off the charts in my view and in my mind, and I'm sure Michael Johnson's, that it's hard to even wrestle with. And the complexity of that was in 2017. That's at my home where I am now.
Oh, gotcha.
And,
Okay.
Yeah, November 17, 2017. But going back to that object, it, I don't know if I felt fear or, I guess, it's either fight or flight, right? Or in the process, you just hope you don't mess yourself. And it seemed as if as a thought occurred to me, what to do next. I mean, in just a flash of a second, like right now, blink my eye, and that in between that blink, all of a sudden the air in the cab of that truck was just literally evacuated. And it felt as if I was, probably 200 pounds in, but I was in really good shape. And it felt and I had on a parka, I had on my fatigues, and I had on long johns underneath those, and I had on bunny boots. Bunny boots we use in extremely cold weather. They have internal bladders on the inside of the ankles and around the foot that you literally open a Schrader valve and you blow air into them. You secure the valve and put it on, and they keep your feet warm in really, really cold weather. I mean, you can't wear a leather boot or something like that in this kind of atmosphere. It's extremely dry. There's no humidity in it. You fall off in that stuff, you'd likely suffocate. But the internal atmosphere of that vehicle was just pulled away. And it bothers me right now talking about it, and it does every single time. I don't care how many times I discuss it by myself or in front of folks or telling folks, but it just happens. And I felt as if I was being pulled by pressures up into the back window of that single cab F-154 pickup truck. And in my mind, in a split second, I knew the only thing that I needed to ask for relief. Where that thought comes from, only God knows. And I grabbed a mag light that I'd gotten as a gift. And I think they had DeSci batteries in it. And back then, in 77, that was a prized tool for any security policeman to own a damn mag light,
Mhm.
I mean, extremely expensive, and not many people had them, and they weren't regular standard issue for a security policeman at all. But I got my hands on one, and I grabbed this mag light, and I reached out, and I had on a mitten on this hand, on my left hand, and it encloses 3 fingers, and your trigger finger is free, and it goes all the way down your wrist to about mid part of your elbow. And then they singe up. So you got your park on. So your hands are extremely warm, and you can operate, your weapons platform that way. And I didn't have a glove on my right hand, and I rolled the window down real quick, and it was blasting cold. I guess, with the adrenaline going through me and everything, it was just like a cold blast of air just hit me like a brick. And I reached up and I grabbed the Western mirrors, those stainless steel Western mirrors on this F-154. And I pulled myself up because I was afraid to step out of the vehicle. I remember saying to Michael Johnson, I said, "You get down?" He didn't say nothing. He was just bathed in a blue, blinding like light. And I said, "I'm not getting out." So I pulled myself up on this window, grabbed hold of the bubble up there of my glove in my left hand, and I lifted up my mag light, and I was just flashing this light at this object the size of a Walmart building with my mag light, just flashing it. Just bing, 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 bing. And I did that 5 or 6 times. And all of a sudden, I could, I just felt as if pressure was released, and I slid back down that seat just like that. I don't know where my mag light went. And I grabbed my M16 and I put it between my legs. And I just held on to the barrel and the A-frame side. I just held on to it, and I didn't know what to think because I was just kind of shaking. And I could breathe a whole lot easier. I turned to Michael Johnson, and I told him, I said, "It's going to be okay now. It'll be all right now," is what I said. No answer. When I looked at him, it was just like the light inside his vehicle was so intense that with your eyes closed, you could see almost the blood vessels in your eyes. And I made sure that window's out because I feared something on the outside of me. I feared something on the right side of that vehicle. And I knew I only had that little thickness of glass separating me from what was out there.
Man, it's just so intense. So Mario's up there. He's in the far north. So I was stationed at Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska for 4 years. So I know those bunny boots. what happens is the ground's so cold, your feet will just go totally numb. You end up being useless if your feet get too cold. So they have these bunny boots that actually put pressure in them, which is interesting. He's talking about the environmental effects. Yeah, you hear that a lot. No sound, intense bright light. And I've heard before where the atmosphere, physical atmosphere around actually changes. And now he communicated with him. So he pulled out that mag light that he got, flashed him just to try and gain some sort of relief. And now he's looking over at his partner, Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson is basically just comatose. I mean, I don't know how you get any more alien abduction story than this. Okay. And it sounds like, I don't know how you make this stuff up. Okay. Seems like security forces guy. He's got his M16 there, just sitting there. He's not pointing it at anything. And now he fears something out the right side of the window. Okay. And he sees beings here. Okay. This is where he has contact. So let's check it out. Crazy story. Let's hear what he says.
And I started to, as I was breathing, I didn't hear any word from Michael Johnson. I don't know if the vehicle was running. I don't know what, but there was something in front of our windshield. And it was about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times the size of a beach ball, but it was black. And it wasn't solid, but it was round. It had like lines from top to bottom, and in between the lines were vents. And I can hear it. It just kind of shot right and left, up and down. And it was right in front of our vehicle, and it was the strangest. I don't even know how. I don't think we had drones then. I don't even know. I didn't even learn the word drone until sometime later. And I kept asking myself, "What is that? What is that?" And all of a sudden, I didn't see it anymore. And I started to kind of close up. It's my tunnel vision or whatever my vision was doing. Now, I know what Michael Johnson was doing. He was just glued to the steering wheel, that light blue plastic steering wheel on an F-150. And I looked to my right as I literally was turning to black, I guess. I mean, it's so hard to just, you ever try to talk to yourself and pass out at the same time? It's very difficult to do. But I looked to my right and I saw 4 shadowy figures, about 3 to 4 feet tall, 3 of them, and then one pole behind them. And the feeling that ran through me is something that it's bothered me right now. But I heard the words inside of my body, not in verbal, speak at all. Do not fear. Do not fear. Sound like slowly over. Or, I guess when you're a child and you're in your mother's womb, like in your father's or your brother's or whoever speaks through her stomach to you, it's kind of like that muffled. We have memory of it. We have memory of whether we know it or not. All of us do, if that happened to us. But that was the memory which I was left with, that I'd heard this. I'd felt this before, this kind of speak or communication. And that felt as if my body was on fire inside. I don't know how to really come to grips with that. And it's just something that I live with. But
Mario has a few things he has to live with on this. So interesting later on, so he relays in this interview, Michael Johnson did hear the same things. And he said that, okay, Mario doesn't relay the beings to the actual Air Force. He doesn't tell them because he thinks he knows they would pull him off his Q prefix. He would lose his basically career. But he does talk to Michael Johnson later, and Michael Johnson did confirm that he heard this as well, separately. He brought it up. According to Mario, Michael Johnson brought it up himself, that they said, do not fear. So he did hear that as well.
the little guy on the right, he had something in his belt, and it was like a rod that was probably 10 to, I don't know, 10, 12 inches long. And the very tip of it had like a yellow, like a yellow ball on it of some type. And it was of a yellow that I can't describe. It was just that color to me. Now, I'm colorblind, so it could have been something else. But the tall one behind the three looked completely different. And he had something right here on the top part of his chest that was the same color as the tip of that little rod. because it all three just coincided at one time. And at about the 15-foot range, I just went black. And that's the last thing that I remember, besides hearing, do not fear, do not fear. I don't know how much time went by. I opened my eyes and I'm in complete blackness, darkness all around me. And I look over at Michael Johnson and I said, hey man, I said, where the hell are we? I don't even know why I asked the question, because he wouldn't know anyway. He's unfamiliar with that area. He didn't answer me. He was stuck to that steering wheel like no person I've ever seen in my life. As if he was catatonic, is a word I want to use, but he was frozen in place. I poked this man's face. I pushed him in his shoulders. I hollered at him. I did everything I could possibly do. In just a few seconds of me opening my eyes into this total blackness, because I was kind of pissed off, to be honest with you. I didn't have any clue where I was, what happened. Where did the object go? I'm talking to myself, but I'm not getting anything from a so-called team leader. I popped the door open. I guess out of anger or fright, I'm not really sure. And I had on my belly boots and I stepped out and I stepped in mud. Now the temperature was between 9 and 13 degrees. And every place else in that whole prairie area around the site and on the site itself and on my parking lot, there was ice and the ground was frozen. And it had been frozen for, I guess, about a week. We'd had a blizzard or something the week before. And when that place gets cold, it gets extremely cold. And it stays that way for a long time. Anyhow, I stepped out in mud. And I went, where the hell are we? Because looking to my immediate right, not 5 or 6 feet away from me, was this slanting, like, wall that went straight up as far as I could see. Now, mind you, I'm in total darkness. It just went straight up and it was white. And it didn't go straight, not a wall that you work against or something, or your home wall, or your house. This is a wall that was at an angle, like 45 degrees, like an angle. And it was covered in snow, as far as I could see. Now, mind you, it was super dark. Anyway, I'm still hollering at him, trying to get something out of him. I said, Mike, you got to talk to me, man. Something we got to do. We got to talk to somebody. The radio came to life. And I heard WSC, November 1, what's your location? And it was like voice of God just came through that radio, because I hadn't heard anything since we got to that missile site. I don't even remember doing security checks. So I said, you got to get that, thinking he'd snap out of it at any given time, which he didn't do. And I reached out. Again, I don't know if the truck was running or it had to be running for that radio to activate. I can't remember. But I grabbed the Motorola handset on the dashboard and I said, November 1, WSC. I said, Senior Airman Woods. I said, he goes, what's your location? And I said, sir, I don't know. He said, do you need medical help? And I said, I'm not sure, but my partner will not, I can't get him to speak to me. A long pause took place. And he said, we want you to do 1 minute security check, Airman Woods. And I said, yes, sir. He goes, we're trying to triangulate your location. I said, yes, sir. So I started doing 1 minute security check. I don't know if New Ohio Police Department or not, I can't remember. And 2 of their patrols were set north on Highway 79 to come look for us also. So that was a revelation that I had no idea that even transpired. So we had, 6 security policemen looking for us and 2 state officials or law enforcement officer patrols looking for us.
Okay, so this is the actual map that Mario drew on the Good Trouble show, and a little later on in the interview at 2-hour 13 mark. Okay, so this is the town of Newell. Okay, so basically here, that's where the actual event happened, November 5 launch facility. And then if you look here, November 1, that's where they basically started. Okay, so where he ended up, okay, they drove out here. Where he ended up with that wall and the water is actually here. This is a dam. If you look at this, so he ended up at this dam. And that's where you get this crazy wall and the mud. The mud actually from, I guess, the water. Maybe there was mud in that area, but I can attest to that type of snow. It's so dry. It's like talcum powder. So very interesting seeing mud there. The other interesting part is what he relays shortly is they triangulate to his position. Okay. So they do find him based on his radio calls. Okay. So they have a direction finder. Okay. So they can drive around. They can actually see where he is, get a location to his radio. As long as you have line of sight, they can do direction finding. So he does the 1 minute security checks while they track him down. They actually find him. What he realized, there's no tracks into this area. There's no truck vehicle tracks going into where their vehicle is. And it's a 2-wheel drive truck. There's not enough room for the truck to even physically turn around. And the 4-wheel drive truck had trouble even getting in there, it sounds like. So amazing. They show up there, they grab him, they bring him back. And as he says, basically start interrogating him. Okay. They split him and Michael Johnson and they do tests. Okay. They never offer him water. He says he's interrogated alone. He's brought over to the medical facility and he actually has burns. Remember, he mentioned that one of his right hand didn't have a glove on it. And so what they find is actually he has burns here on his hand and on his eye. So right above his eye, he has sunburn actually. And they take physical samples. The doctors actually take physical samples, according to Mario. And again, don't tell him anything about it. They act like he was at fault. Basically, he feels the whole time that he was in trouble, that he's definitely in trouble.
And I left with him. And then Michael Johnson went with the assistant flight chief. And then the officers, of course, they remained, because they're doing their 3 days like we would be doing our 3 days. That was the second morning that we would be out there. I had none of this happened. We'd been on bed rest and ready to go back on duty at 6 p.m. that night. So it was about 55 minutes to an hour back to Ellsworth. And of course I talked, Eric, but it's on great. Everything that I could remember, everything that I said. I did not tell them at any time, nor him, what I saw out that window, because being part of the personal reliability program in a nuclear configuration or sensitive nuclear material configuration or team or response personnel, first responder, they would have eliminated me from that position and taken me out of that career field. And that's what I joined for.
Okay, so this is the Sigma right here. Okay, so he has this amazing experience. There's another supposed witness there, Michael Johnson. He relays everything except for the actual alien beings. Okay, so even then, he can't bring himself to tell about the alien beings because he's on PRP status. This is that Q prefix. I can't remember what it stands for. Personnel Responsibility Program is probably what it stands for. PRP. So they additional tracking on you, additional investigation. It's a pain. And that's why he joined, right? He joined to have that Q prefix. People take it seriously. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of pain to gain and maintain that prefix. So this is the stigma right here. It doesn't talk about the beings. And he's treated like dirt pretty much the whole rest of the time.
So I never disclosed that. I went as far as the vehicle and what happened and what I saw and the way Michael Johnson was in his situation, the size of it and that kind of thing. But we arrived at the back gate in Box Elder at Ellsworth and went straight to the SATEP building, which was the 44th Missile Security Squadron Command Center building. They used to be B-52 bomber buildings or hangars, and it was converted because they had built new hangars for the new aircraft. And so it was a configuration of offices and everything like that. We security control was there and all that. So, but I went into Colonel Spraker's office. I had to report to him, just like you walk in, I hit the door, come in, stand at attention, salute him, the whole 9 yards, everything. And there were 5 people in the room. And of course, one of them was my flight chief, and then later the assistant flight chief came, but it was a tall man in a suit. Still don't know who that person was to this day. And I think he was local, maybe local law enforcement. Could have been, been federal. I don't know. I wasn't told. I didn't ask. And then there was OSI, Office of Special Investigation. There was a Captain Jack Reed, which I just found that out about 2 months ago, and a young airman by the name of Richard Doty. And Richard Doty's been on a bunch of programs, and I've been trying to make contact with him because it was really funny. The first time I ever saw Ancient Aliens, and I see this guy pop up, Richard Doty, and I go, wait, I know that guy. He was there today of my debrief. So I've been trying to contact him ever since. It took about 4 years, maybe 5, to where he just emailed me through another podcaster, I got in touch with him and as their friends, and he sure enough emailed me and remembered the incident. So I've got that email also.
Mario says later in this interview that he gave all the names. He has all the names of the people that were there to corroborate his story. He just named 3 of them. Richard Doty is the only one so far who's been able to confirm his story. Michael Johnson, he talked to him. Can't find Michael Johnson now. Where is Michael Johnson? If Michael Johnson, if you're out there, please get in touch with Mario or myself or any other podcaster. It'd be great to get your corroboration, but at least get in touch with Mario. It seems like he's concerned about you at this time. And Mario says it a couple times. Go check my story. You don't believe me? Here's the names of these people. Ask them. Ask them. And my question to them would be, are you going to take integrity first? Because what Mario talks about is he had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. They treated him like dirt and made him sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Totally out of my realm of thought at the time. I go, burn. And he goes, yes. He said, son, you burned. I said, okay. And he gets right here on the side of my face on the upper right eye, right here. I'll take my glasses off. Right there, my face was burned. My beret was on my head. And my beret went down just like this. And just underneath that shadow area, I was burned there and on the back of this right hand. That's the hand I did not have blood on. So he took 2 skin samples of the back of his hand, like on top of this knuckle, right here between this index finger and knuckle. And then they took 1 skin sample from right up here, just clipped it off. And they had 2 different vials. And what he clipped off, he put in the tool and the skin sample went into this small little vial, and it was capped. Either capped or it was plugged with a rubber cork. I don't remember, but it was on a little stainless steel tray. And I thought, that's the weirdest thing. A skin sample out of the blue from the missile field. And I thought, at the time, I didn't feel a burn, but later on that day when I took a shower, I did. Because I was from Tampa, Florida, and by God, you get burned down there, you're sunburned. And so it had been a while since I'd been to Tampa and been sunburned, but I definitely knew the feelings of sunburn. And sure enough, it was burned. And then, and it was like back here on the back part of my wrist here also. So I had to explain that later because they put those really small little Band-Aids on me. And that I had, once I was all done and I was able to get dressed again. And they checked everything, my knees, I checked my legs, and I was glad that's all they did. And that lasted for probably an hour and 20 minutes, maybe, hour and 30 minutes. And then I got dressed yesterday. Because the things in which they did, they took moments to talk about it or to do something between themselves. I don't really know. And so then I was allowed to get dressed, and then I was back in the commander's vehicle, driven back over to the safety house building where I went back in to see Colonel Spraker again. And I never got offered water or anything like that. I said I was dying of thirst, and I didn't even see a water fountain, man. It was terrible. But so I go back in there and the same thing, knock on the door, report back into him, go back in there, standard attention. I mean, there's way to the letter, in every way. Because again, I just felt as if, okay, I'm in trouble here. I'm in trouble. And you should not be made to feel that way because I wasn't the only one stuff that happened to in the missile field, not just at Ellsworth, but Maida, F.E. Warren, or Maelstrom. I wasn't the only one. So I just want that known. So I was in there for another hour or so, and he went back over the entire incident, everything that I told him. And he hands me a Skillcraft pen. And I don't know if you know the magic of a Skillcraft pen, but that U.S. government official pen can calibrate your M16, can change your sight setting. It can dislodge ground. It can help you take down your M16, remove all pins in it. And believe me, every soldier's got a damn Skillcraft pen to write a letter on somewhere hidden on the body. But so he gave me that, and he gave me a report form, which I thought was a 1,000, but it's not. Robert Hastings got me to decide that one day. I couldn't remember the report form because I wasn't allowed to keep anything, and it's hard to bring everything back from, 45 years ago, in a chronological order. And I'm just doing the best that I can do. and it's as fresh today as it was then. And I just have to keep it that way because people have to know. But he puts me in a room off the side of his office. I guess it was a small briefing room with oak chairs and an oak desk with a skill craft pen, and gives me 2 or 3 of these forms. And these forms are 3 pages thick. They're carbon copies. And that's about how much it took me. Well, it took me all 3 pages to write what I just have told you on this show. To be, and I print very well and I print small, but I got it all in there. And of course, I signed that, and the whole dated, and the whole 9 yards. And I was not given a copy of it at all, nor was I given a copy of the medical records. And I need to pull my medical records again and see if there's anything on there. But once I finished that, back into his office, I go, standing at attention. Then Captain Jack Reed steps up to the desk beside Colonel Spraker, and he hands in his paperwork. And the paperwork is a non-disclosure agreement that as long as I am working in the sensitive or nuclear weapons field and have a secret intact clearance in this job, that I cannot disclose or release any of this information to anybody and anyone. And it would, at any time, as long as I have a federal clearance and I'm working in the nuclear type in the industry. I don't know if they use that word industry, but he said in the nuclear field. So I would say industry too. That way, in that time, U.S. Department of Energy was the Atomic Energy Commission, if I'm not mistaken, but I knew of them because we transported. So I agreed to it and I signed it and didn't disclose anything. Then I was allowed to call home and arrange, or my wife had come get me. And of course, she had questions, about what was over my eye and my head and why I was back so soon. And instead of being gone 3 days at a time, I really couldn't discuss that, and I didn't. And but I honestly, I started immediately having the absolute worst cataclysmic, apocalyptic dreams that I can't even describe to you, with earthquakes, with atomic blasts, the sun blasted us, tidal waves, just things that is just totally off the chain, without anything at all and without seeing anything like that at all. Just these dreams just wake me up. And I had an additional out of body experience where I left my body in a dream, and I got to the ceiling and I looked down and there's a thread connecting me to my body. And my wife is laying there and my cat's downstairs on the couch. And then I realized where I was, and I took a deep breath and I woke up, sat up in the bed. Oh, what the hell was that?
So Mario had human factors, human effects. He relays, I didn't include it here, but after he gets back to Ellsworth, he goes to the bathroom and he feels as if he's going to die, essentially. Feels like he's dying, physically dying, has near-death experience, he relates, and essentially comes back into his body because the canine police dog is there sniffing around and brings him back in. So just amazing human factors, human effects. And the whole time he's a victim during the event. And then he's treated as the actual perpetrator when he gets back. And I can know this as the Air Force, right? You're going to be guilty until proven innocent if you're in the military justice system that I've seen, unfortunately. So in this case, they obviously don't believe him, thinks he's done something wrong, and he doesn't even relay the actual being interaction. That being said, he has talked to AARO. He's done a 4-hour interview with AARO, and he was investigated by the Air Force. And who is the tall man in the suit? And what about the captain? He has a name, Colonel Stryker. There's another person. My guess is these people are still alive. And my question is, what's their recollection of the event? Where is the evidence? Where is his 3-page written testimony? Where's the burn samples? How is it so ironic that Richard Doughty was there? That seemed also crazy to me. But he was able to actually confirm his story. He's able to confirm Mario's story. I found it interesting that the non-disclosure agreements, only while he's in the nuclear industry, he was in that industry for at least another 14 years. He's worked in DOE for many other programs. This interview is so far-reaching. So here's some other key notes I wrote down from this. Okay. Again, 3-hour interview. So Mario says it actually smelled like iodine. There was a strong iodine smell, which is basically ammonia. That's the same strong smell that they noted at the Varginha case down in Brazil. That's where they had other beings, supposed live beings, captured. Mario says that AARO will never disclose this information to the general populace. He believes that they'll never disclose it to the general populace, which is unfortunate. But he says it's not going to come from the government. Mario has a few choice words for Kirkpatrick and the AARO team. Let's check that out.
So I just try to be as upfront as possible. But, I watched what Sean Kirkpatrick said during his last briefing when he stated that there was no correlation or no connection with nuclear weapons. And I just literally had to laugh at this guy. And you know what, Mr. Kirkpatrick, if you're watching this, I would sit down and chat with you any dadgum time you'd like to talk about it. I don't know what else I can say other than what my word is. But with all your resources and scientific background and what you know, if you think that this is not going on, you're mistaken. And you need to come to grips with it yourself. Because it has happened to people, and this by God happened to me. And I'll stand behind that any way, fashion, or form that you can come up with.
How long did AARO interview you for? How long did that go?
4 hours and 19 minutes.
And was it Dr. Kirkpatrick that interviewed you?
No, but I'm not allowed to say who it was.
So you, part of your legal agreement with them was that you could not state who the interviewer was in AARO, correct?
Correct.
And can you speak as to what kind of questions they asked or what the questions were?
Not much different than what you come up with. I just can't repeat the direct questions in which I was asked. But basically, the incident is the same, no matter who's asking the questions. Nothing is going to change that. Nothing is going to change my hypnosis sessions. And my last latest was with the director of CAARO, and Yvonne Smith, and she sent me a recording of that. I offered up any of that, any of my hypnosis sessions. I offered anything that they wanted, they could have. I have nothing to hide from them. And
Did they request any of those materials? And did you
Nope.
hear back from AARO at all?
I have not yet.
Okay. You would testify in front of Congress
Oh, absolutely.
under oath.
Yeah, under oath. Absolutely. I'm under oath with you right now.
Do you
That's
think
all I do.
at the Senate hearing, do you think Dr. Kirkpatrick had a net negative effect on whistleblowers wanting to come forward? Or do you think what he sort of seemingly said to say there was no, as I think you mentioned earlier, no sign of extraterrestrial activity? Do you think that this deflated or discouraged further whistleblowers from coming forward?
I don't think I know it did. And I know some that it has already.
So
Yes.
to be clear, you know of whistleblowers that were ready to come forward and talk to the Pentagon, and after Dr. Kirkpatrick's performance, they no longer want to do that.
They don't trust him.
They don't trust.
Yeah, that was Mario's words for Dr. Kirkpatrick. Let's say if Kirkpatrick is a true professional, he'll listen to him. Is this not credible evidence? How can Kirkpatrick say there's no credible evidence of extraterrestrial off-world technology if you have trusted, credible testimony from our nuclear defenders? If we can't trust our soldiers, patriots who have said that they put their lives on the line and go up to a nuclear facility with a supermarket-sized UFO over it. If we can't trust those guys to tell us the truth of what happened, then who can we trust? If we can't trust Mario, then what's the point? We can't trust anyone then, at least in the US. So unfortunately, as Mario said, that did affect it. That is the stigma. Okay, so when Kirkpatrick goes out there, he has access to all this information. Right? Kirkpatrick should have access to the files. He should be able to read Mario's medical records, right, that he cannot see? Is that burn operation in his medical records? What about the results? Was he burned? What kind of burn? Yeah, again, be nice if we treated our soldiers with more respect and actually listen to what they're saying. And like Mario said, he has other people willing to come out, willing to speak. But the impression from the US government, at least from AARO right now, is that it couldn't possibly be the case. So how are they going to tell you that, hey, I saw aliens, if they know right from the get-go that you don't believe them? Right? Mario told the Air Force, told the military, he gave everything. He gave all the evidence 44 years ago. Question is, what happened to the evidence? That's what you guys should be looking at. Instead of attacking these guys, maybe listening to them. Just an idea. Okay, but that's going to be the way we can get to the truth. And I don't know how you can discount this testimony. Okay. In my mind, this is really where the rubber meets the road. Do you believe Mario or do you not? There's a lot of other evidence there. Richard Doty was there. What does he remember? That'd be my question for AARO. How do you address these? You made no mentions, Kirkpatrick, about Nimitz, said nothing about Fravor, said nothing about Gimbal, nothing on the East Coast, nothing from any of our actual, the really compelling cases. Nothing. Robert Salas, Robert Jacobs, nothing on the nuclear connection. Okay, to come out and just say there's no connection to nuclear weapons, I have to agree with Mario, really sounds like lying. It really does. Representative Gallagher asked about Robert Salas. Bob Salas has said for years, for decades, 25 years, he's been going to DeSci and holding press conferences about these events. So it's not like this is one isolated event. Okay, there's a lot of these events. And I know you guys are scared. You don't want this information getting out because it's about nuclear weapons. But guess what? Nuclear weapons can destroy the world anyway. You guys could just be launching them, right? You're the ones holding the country, the whole world, at ransom to these nuclear attacks. A human would never launch a nuclear weapon. Okay, it's only done by a nation or corporation. These are the only things that would actually launch nuclear weapon. Rogue nation, right? Single crazy human, potentially, but only ones that launched been the US so far. Think of that. So I recommend you go check out that interview. It's amazing. Mario talks about a second event actually in his room. Basically, a portal opened in his room. Again, who's he going to tell? No one can believe him. But the man's too tired to run and too old to give a damn, like he says. And he thinks the information should get out there. It doesn't sound like it was a very positive experience for Mario. But then again, he didn't die, right? Could have easily just been disappeared, right? So whatever beings these were returned him relatively unharmed. He does mention he had some sort of issues on his arm and his ankle. Looks like some sort of skin or something was removed. But crazy story. And this is the woo, right? Where people don't want to touch it. He didn't want to give the information talking about these beings. He didn't want to talk about his actual abduction experience because he went later and did hypnosis. So apparently you can do hypnosis to look back and what happened during that missing time. Because when he was picked up at the dam, when he was actually picked up at the dam, it was 6 a.m. When he arrived at November 5, it was 1 a.m. So there's 5 hours of missing time. This is just one image that he sent. Someone made up the image. In the interview, he relays more, but he's basically in some side of gas. He said there was some sort of atmosphere surrounding him, and the beings are outside of the atmosphere. So it's some sort of like containment field that allows him to survive different atmospheric conditions. Is this the Virginia case? It sounds like they need some sort of foreign atmosphere to survive. If you look at Virginia, they were feeble, dying, smelled like ammonia, red eyes. Okay, could that be from the air, from the atmosphere, actually burning their eyes? Could have been that. Could these be these same beings? And he relays here, that's where he had some piece of skin cut out, looks like has a little dimple on the inside, and he had another one on his ankle. Here's the one on his ankle. Okay, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. I thought it was just such a compelling interview. Mario will be coming on the show in the next few weeks. We're just aligning the time now. Please put in the comments questions for Mario that you want me to ask. Thank you so much for all your support. And thanks for watching to the end. Please smash that like button. Subscribe to get future notifications. It does really help the channel anytime you share it or interact. Interaction is huge these days, so I really appreciate it. And then, like I said, if you want to support the channel more, if you want to get backstage content, exclusive access, ad-free videos, go to patreon.com/Chris Lato. Join all of these amazing people. Thanks for being here. Have a great day. Peace.